to my right are some people that I think you're going to love to hear from. So first and foremost, we have Naeem Khan, a fashion designer who just recently showed at New York Fashion Week. We have Anjula Acharia, investor, manager, fashion icon. Where does it end? She's incredible, Anjula. We have Tan France, Queer Eye host, My Fashion Inspo. Now also teaching everyone how to cook on Instagram.
That's right.
So, Tan, are you on the wrong panel? Are you supposed to be on the food panel today?
I don't know why I wasn't invited for that one. I'm really disappointed. Thanks.
We've got to fix that. We've got to fix that. So what I love about all of your journeys, it's been so unique. I think what I said to Naeem and you when we were chatting before is that I think if you were, like, say, even 19 or 20 looking out into your future, you wouldn't have predicted any of your careers, I believe.
Oh, I would have. Go on.
You would have.
No.
So was there a pivotal moment when you were young where you were like, hey, I'm on the right track. I'm doing something different. Like, this is it. I'm doing it.
Would you like to
Do you want to start with? I want to ask for each of you, but Tan, let's go first.
Yeah, no, there was a moment where my first business started to take off, and I knew that I was on the right track. I started my first business when I was 24, and the first 2 years were hellacious, as business usually is within its infancy. And then about 2 years in, I could afford to pay all of my bills without worrying at all, without worrying about next month. And that was the turning point, because I'm positive this is the case for many of us, especially as creatives. My family expected me to be a doctor, and I wasn't interested in that whatsoever. And so it took a long time to convince my family, no, you can be successful as a designer, you can be successful as a creative. And I think that was a turning point where I thought, oh, I can actually afford to live this life, not just make things work or make ends meet. And so that was the turning point for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Anjula?
Is this working?
Is the mic working?
Is it working?
I think for me, I mean, I've had such a long journey kind of through different careers and taken different turns. But I think the pivotal moment for me was when I landed in San Francisco Bay Area from England. And it's a funny story because I went from having zero privilege to a lot of privilege. I think South Asians in the UK, as you would know, we're definitely not, we don't have any privilege.
No.
We're kind of seen as
Second class citizens.
Yeah, and working class, like no one thinks you're clever or smart. And I land in San Francisco into the Bay Area, and I'm South Asian, so everyone thinks I'm smart. And then I have so true, they're like, oh, you tech brilliant person. And then on top of that, I had this British accent, which really people thought I was very, very smart, and I couldn't believe it. So I started just raising money without even trying, and I raised money for my first startup, Desi Hits, which was a cross-cultural platform from, I hate to use these terms, especially when I'm speaking to Indians or South Asians, but Hollywood to Bollywood.
Ooh.
But I'm used to using those words and people understand those words. So, I built this platform, and we took everyone from Lady Gaga to 50 Cent to Rihanna to India. We did all this cross-cultural content. And my first round of financing, I raised $5 million for it. And it was actually, I hate to say, and good to say, was really easy because I had all this privilege of being South Asian with a British accent and everyone.
Wow, just because of your English accent, you got $5 million given to you. Just fake a British accent, you guys.
I wouldn't say it was just that. I mean, obviously I had some smarts, but I literally bumped into this money. I didn't actively fundraise or go out and get it, but people were literally, I was in Silicon Valley at a time when, digital media was really hot, as you know, right? And I was in the right place at the right time, but it just kept happening. So what was amazing for me, I think, to be coming from England, where I'd experienced so much racism, where I'd been marginalized, where I don't think South Asian culture or fashion or anything was really, held to a standard, or people, felt good about it. And I came to America, and I had this moment where suddenly people really valued it and valued my input into it. So,
yeah. How about you, Naeem?
Mine was at the age of 16. My girlfriend at that time, I always wanted to be in fashion, and I had said to her that one day I want to dress the First Lady of the United States when I was 16. When I came to go to school here, instead of going to school, I somehow got a job with Halston. And the pivotal moment for me was when I got the job, I was walking with my dad on Park Avenue going to a restaurant, and my brain was like, when he offered me the job, I couldn't believe that I had got this job. Walking totally focused on the floor and on the side path, footpath, and it was glistening with the mica in the thing. All I remember till now was American noise in the background and the glistening floor and like diamonds. And to me, that I knew that I had arrived somewhere and I had the most fascinating opportunity that I could make my career.
And you did end up dressing the first lady.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is like what you wish for, it really happens.
I also want to talk about another interesting thing is about this trade-off between risk and safety. Typically, you would think that someone who has a little bit more privilege takes more risk because, oh, I have a little bit more capital, I can fall back on my family. But I think what I've been hearing from all of your stories, and I've gotten a chance to interview all of you actually in separate occasions, is, you know, you sometimes talk about that, which is like growing up poor or not having that privilege, but still taking that risk. So how did you get that confidence to take the risk when you don't have that safety net, when you don't have that privilege?
Who's going first?
Oh,
Who wants to go first?
I can go. First of all, working for a designer like Halston, I was with him for 8 years. And I had to take my chances. And people were telling me, don't do it. Stay working for somebody else. Apart from being a designer, also I like being an entrepreneur. With $5,000 in my pocket, I started a collection. And the first season, I sold $1 million. And I had no money to produce it. So I went to the bank. The bank won't give me a loan because I needed like at least $200,000 to buy fabrics and stuff. I asked my dad for the money. And from India, sending money was very, very difficult. It had to go through some Dubai connection. And so somehow my father finagled the money. And I got the money. And I bought the fabrics. I made the dresses. And I still remember, I made the most money. I was like 24, 25 or something like that. And I had like $500,000 in my bank account. I was like, oh my God, I'm so rich. And to me, that moment was like so incredible that I bought myself the fanciest car. I went and bought a house in Connecticut. I mean, I was so happy. So you have to take your risk. And you have to just jump in with little money, but with a good vision.
So my risks, I mean, I've taken a lot of business risks, but my risks have been kind of like a constant thing. And I think risk becomes a habit, right? Where you get used to taking risks. And my risks have been weird ones. I'll give you an example, two examples. One was, you know, I took Lady Gaga to India, and this was just after the whole meat dress incident. And everyone was like, you want to launch Lady Gaga in India after she's worn a meat dress, which was probably beef. And I was like, yeah, it's just like a crazy thing to do. And I was really panicked. And I was like, I knew it was a risk, but I was really panicked. And everyone said I was going to lose my credibility in the entertainment industry by doing this in India and in America. But, you know, I did as much prep as I could. I spoke to everybody, her team and her, and we did it. And it was a huge success. And, you know, she wore an Indian designer. She did everything, and it was amazing. And but I remember, like, up until the trip, I had sleepless nights constantly thinking this could really backfire in my face, right? Because she stood for a lot of things that in India just weren't cool at that time, particularly for the LGBTQ community. And then the other thing that I did was I collaborated Pussycat Dolls with A.R. Rahman for Jai Ho. And same thing, everyone was like, this is like a, you know, cabaret band, like Pussycat Dolls are like really not down the line. They're too sexy. How's that going to work with A.R. on this movie? And again, like, it's funny because Anita's sitting there and she was with me through this entire journey. And I would literally have sleepless nights going, oh my God, is this collaboration going to work? Like, what's going to happen? Is it going to blow up in my face again? Are they too sexy? Are they too this? You know, all of that stuff. And, you know, it was a huge success. We were top 10 in 10 countries, and it led to me signing Priyanka Chopra off the back of that. And I got the leeway to do that with a huge label in the States because I'd had that success. But I think all these things give me sleepless nights. But, you know, as Naeem said, it's like, you just got to do it. Like, you can't overthink things. You can't, because you then won't do great things. He won't dress, you know, the first lady if he's not taking risks.
And by the way, Lady Gaga wore my dress when you went.
I know.
That meat dress was his.
Oh yes, the meat
Indian
dress.
designer.
Title is about South Asian fashion.
For me, risk was inevitable. I'm the youngest of my siblings. My family are from Pakistan and India, and they're immigrants to the UK. And they had all lived a life that I didn't want to live. Quite frankly, they all, most of them worked for other people, and I just thought, I don't want that to be my cap in life. I don't want that to be the greatest I can achieve. I want to do something even bigger. And so when I started my first, many of you may not know this, I didn't just become an entertainer, and I wasn't working as an entertainer before Queer. I wasn't an entertainer at all before then. I was a business owner first and foremost. I was a designer of women's wear. Very different from Naeem's. Mine was regular retail stores like Nordstrom. Anyway, so I had to risk. I felt like I was compelled to, and so I raised $13,000. It was my own savings. I'm Muslim, which means I'm not allowed to accept interest or pay interest. I'm not allowed a credit card. I'm not allowed a mortgage, any of those things. And so at that time, I was really quite religious. And so I had to save up the money myself. And I took the risk thinking I'd rather take the risk and lose all of my savings than live a life that I just don't think is going to be fulfilling for myself. I don't want to answer to somebody else. And quite honestly, I'm an insolent person. I don't want to listen to anybody else. I always think I'm right. And I think that most of the people...
are.
Yeah. And I think that most of the people that run these companies are idiots. And I always thought, I can do better than you. And I can make a smarter business decision. And so I felt like risk was the only chance of me creating a life that was bigger than my parents could ever have dreamt of. And I'm so grateful that I did. And I want to make it clear that I failed multiple times. When you risk, you are going to have failures, whether big or small. I failed multiple times, but I continue to take the risk thinking, I'm positive it's going to pay off.
Thank you for sharing, because I think sometimes you just need that confidence, someone to tell you it's okay to do it.
And also, I think it's really easy to look at what you see on this stage and think, well, it was easy. They took a chance and they made it. It's not that. Like, I know for a fact we all struggled to
100%.
get to this point, and that failure is the thing that drives you even further. It's not as easy as they just said they're going to do it and they did it.
I mean, for me, that whole success, 2 years it was successful, and the economy takes a tumble.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're as good as your last collection.
of course.
And as good as your, what's happening with the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember all that money, and suddenly you've gone and spent it because you were not wise enough to save. And
Yeah, you bought that house in Connecticut and that fancy car. I remember.
And I'm very different. I had a huge mortgage. And then, I mean, when the economy took a tumble and nobody was buying, you're like, what the hell? And you're in the store saying, do I buy chicken or do I buy the hot dog?
That's why. Listen, that's
Hot
why,
dogs are cheaper.
That's why you buy everything with cash. The Muslim way is sometimes the right way.
I don't know. I'm a points girl. I like my points.
I
don't buy
also
anything
no,
with
I know.
cash.
I really am jealous when people use points for shit. I'm like, what is that? How are you getting free shit?
I'm much more like Anjula. I'm definitely a points person. Naeem, you hinted at your collection. So you recently showed at New York Fashion Week, and it was full of these shimmering gowns and even a collaboration with Wicked. So how do you keep your inspiration going when you're, like you said, you're always as good as your last collection? So you got to keep producing. It doesn't end. So where do you get that from?
Oh my, it's a grind, and it's actually what happens is your brain becomes on autopilot. So I literally design every minute I'm designing. It's not like I sit down and I design. I could be at the airport. Things just pop in my mind. And what happens is like being a great chef, right? You know all your ingredients. You know how much fire, you know how many spices. So I have the formula. So and I know my woman. I know what works in what markets. And it's taken me almost 30, 40 years to figure all this out. So to me, I need little inspirations. Like, for example, when Universal Pictures came to me wanting to collaborate with me, I mean, I loved the idea, but then I had these crazy ideas where I wanted to be all wicked, means evil. But how do you make glamour, evil glamour? But then I'm calmed down with all the staff around me that you need to make real stuff. You can't become, something crazy. So I have a great team. I come up with concepts, then we all fine-tune things, and it's a constant search. You could be inspired from history, nature. You're always searching. But then also I have a vast, array of companies that come to me with the most amazing products. And then I can fine-tune them to fit into my world. So it's taken years to develop all this, and I think it takes a village to make
But
it.
after all this time, do you still enjoy it?
I love it.
Okay,
I
good.
love it to the point that I don't like anything else.
Wow.
Even in, or anyone else.
I hate people.
I hate everybody. I live in Miami, and I'm, it's constantly, my staff
You
is.
don't like people if you live in Miami.
Oh, yeah. Believe me. Yeah, Miami's another world on its own.
Exactly.
So it comes from everywhere, and it's just years of experience.
You're just making it look too easy because I don't think I could have created that.
No,
by
but
just-
I think easy, but think of the 40 years I put into it.
Yeah.
That's not been easy. It's been all these getting up, falling, learning, good, not good. And it's just your constant search. So you develop your brain to function that way.
Anjula, I want to ask you something, which is your eye for talent and developing that eye for the next big thing, whether it's investing or, when you started managing Priyanka Chopra, it wasn't obvious that she was going to be one of the world's biggest celebrities at all. I want people to rewind the clock. I know it's hard to remember the past, but it wasn't, all these things weren't obvious. So like you said, building a practice for risk, how do you build a practice for being ahead of the curve and observing trends and being ahead of it?
Yeah, my mentor, this guy called Jimmy Iovine, he was the founder of Beats by Dre headphones and was a phenomenal music executive, signed everyone from Eminem to 50 Cent to U2, Lady Gaga. He gave me this amazing lesson, which I will share with you guys, and you've got to do it because it's brilliant and it's really informed every decision I've made. And I'll give you 2 examples. So basically, what he said to me, because he's brilliant, right? He'd found all these talent, and I said, Jimmy, how do you do that? And he goes, well, you've got to be able to anticipate pop culture. And I said, okay, that's great, but how do you do that? Break it down for me. So he said, you've got to use your ears in the same ratio to your mouth. So you've got to listen more than you talk. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, so when you're out for dinners, when you're at the water fountain, or when you're grabbing coffee, what is the common thing that people talk about? And he goes, and you have to listen really acutely, and that will tell you where pop culture is going. And I do this all the time. So I'll give you 2 examples of where that really worked for me. When I signed Priyanka Chopra, and just so you guys know, I've managed her for now 12 years now. And when I signed her to a music deal, to a record label that I had with Jimmy Iovine, and we worked with the biggest and brightest people, everyone from will.i.am to Pitbull to everyone who was hot at that time, and it didn't work. And we were going back into the studio to record more music, and I go, Jimmy, no, we're not going to do that. And he goes, why? And I said, because I've been listening to what everybody's talking about. And what everybody's talking about right now is shows like Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Grey's Anatomy, Modern Family. And I go, what do they all have in common? And he just looked at me and I said, diverse female leads. And that's what everybody at that time was talking about. Everyone said, did you see the last episode of Scandal? Did you see How to Get Away with Murder? So I was like, Priyanka's an amazing actress. And the music's not working, it's not connecting, so let's pivot her and let's put her in the next ABC show. So then I went to ABC and I convinced them to do a show with her, and that led to Quantico. But I only got that because I was listening. And then going to my investments, I invested in a company called ClassPass, founded by Payal Kadakia. I exited for I think about $1.2 billion to MindBody. And the reason I made that investment was, A, she was brilliant and she pitched to me, and I was her first investor and she was my first investment. But what was happening at that time, I'd moved to New York and I was asking everybody what gym they go to because I wanted to join a gym. And everyone was saying the same thing to me, which is like, oh, I don't go to gyms, I go to Soul Cycle, or I go to Barry's Boot Camp, I go to Pop Physique. And everyone was talking about classes. So when she then came to me with this platform that was booking classes, I was like, wait, that's what everyone's trying to do right now. This is a great idea. And the way she described it to me was that she wanted to build the open table for classes. And at that time, you had to call every individual studio to book a class. You couldn't discover classes. And she just came up with this incredible platform, which, by the way, pivoted 3 times, failed, rebuilt. So it wasn't a like overnight success. But what that taught me was that's how you see around the corners. That's how you figure out what's next. You just have to listen to people and listen to the constant conversation.
So Angela, can you tell us what's next? Like, what are you like what are you listening to right now?
I can't tell you that.
No.
No, I honestly, what I think is next is it's so boring to say it, but AI. Like, how is AI going to improve every business that we are in, from design to manufacturing to, like, AI is, to me, where it's at, and everyone is talking about AI.
Tan, I have a question for you. So
About AI, I know so
about AI.
Tell us about AI.
well, let me tell you.
Oh my God. But I think what's interesting to me about, like, I actually found out about you through Queer Eye, and I never considered myself to be quote unquote a fashion girly. I was like, I don't have time for fashion. I'm working. I'm going to wear my little suits. I used to be a consultant. Like, I didn't even think about it. And then I would see your segments on Queer Eye, and you had such empathy. And it was the first time where I could see kind of the transformational power of fashion, because it's also how people are seeing themselves and the stories they're telling themselves. How do you develop your practice? Because it's very different from, how do I explain it? Like, just watching, there's nothing wrong with watching fashion on the runway, but it's very different from those experiences, that cattiness that you see, or like or Gossip Girl. So what's your fashion practice?
So first off, when the show first came out and I got to go to these fancy entertainer parties, Hollywood parties, whatever, I would have major stylists come up to me, stylists that we all know, and would say, gosh, it's a shame you don't do like fashion on the show. And I really try. I was actually grateful for what they were saying, but what they were saying was ludicrous. I'm here helping people who live in the middle of nowhere, who don't have access to Naeem Khan, Dior, Fendi, whatever. They have a target. But that doesn't mean that she can't feel great about herself. And I remember as a kid, my family was poor, quite frankly, and we didn't have money for clothes. My clothes were my siblings' clothes. I'm the youngest, and I would take their clothes and do something with it. I learned how to sew at a very young age, and I would alter their clothes to fit me. And so I when I got the job on Queer Eye and they asked me what I wanted to do, I said, I want to go to stores within 20 minutes of these people's homes, and I want to show them that no matter what they wear, they get to feel just as beautiful as Gigi Hadid gets to feel when she walks down a runway. And that has been the thing that I've stuck with ever since. I love fashion very much. I also host a show called Next in Fashion with Gigi Hadid, which I love. I love clothes. I love fashion. But when it comes to the average girl in middle America, I understand that she doesn't have access to that. She doesn't understand the world of high fashion. But what she does understand is that she wants to feel good as any girl in a major city. And that will always be my North Star.
And how did you develop that discipline, though, like in terms of, hey, like watch out for these kind of principles or these things that make it so accessible? You know,
I don't have a general style that I push on anybody. I want to know what their life is. And so I will say, tell me what kind of person you look up to. Maybe it is a Priyanka. But if Priyanka had your budget, what would she go for if she had let's say an H&M budget? And so
Zara, she's about Zara.
Or Zara. Who doesn't love Zara? I love Zara. Actually, Zara is where I made my start, just so you all know. I used to dress windows for Zara all over. It was great.
Just on that, when I first met Priyanka, she used to wear like Zara skirts, but then she'd wear fancy shoes.
Yeah.
She'd be like, it's high-low, baby.
No, I still do high-low. My jeans are J. Crew. They're my favorite jeans I've ever worn in my life. And so I will always appreciate somebody's personal requirements. And so there isn't really a formula. It's tell me who you are, tell me the kind of people that you look up to in the public, and if they had your budget, what would they appreciate? And let's base your style on what they would buy if they had access to the target near you. So that has always been my my practice. There's no general rule of thumb.
But thank you for sharing that practice. I think that's been so heartwarming for so many people to see.
Thanks. I would like to believe that the main thing I get from the audience when they see me on the street is you've allowed me to feel like I don't I have access to the world that I thought I didn't have access to. And it doesn't matter that I don't have a lot of money, I still get to feel beautiful. And that is, if that's my legacy, that's my legacy. I'm proud of that. Yeah.
You know, most women I mean, I deal with women almost every day.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. They don't know. And you have to really help.
Yeah.
Right. And especially middle America. I mean, I do shows in the middle of nowhere. My team and I go. You have to like help them.
Yeah.
And I think somebody like you with such good taste.
Thanks.
Can I just say, it's not just middle America. I need help.
I'll go shopping with you happily.
I'm going to take you up on that.
I love to shop. I do think, I agree, I think a lot of people just don't know where to start. But I love nothing more than to, this is going to sound vulgar, undress a woman and say, who do you want to be? Let's make you that person today. And that really gets me going.
You know, one of the success for my brand is that you design something that you can zip up one thing.
Yeah.
And you look fabulous.
Yeah.
Like I do these dresses in stretch sequin, which you can roll up, put in your bag, and you could go anywhere. You don't have to iron,
Yeah.
and you just put it on, and
The
it's
dream.
simple. My most selling dresses are like T-shirt dresses.
Yeah.
That women like a crew neck,
Yeah, doesn't
sleeve,
surprise me.
simple.
Yeah.
And it's got not super style, but it's classic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody looks good in it.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I now want to talk a little bit about how you think about scaling your business, because Naeem, you've talked a little bit about owning your business 100% now, going through all of that, but you're still, aiming to do more. And how do you think about that in a creative field without, like you said, losing it all, not...
So,
Yeah.
when I worked for Halston, we were almost doing $2 billion a year. And we lost it in 1 year and became zero in 1 year. And when you're owned by other people, sometimes fashion is tricky. So I decided that I never want to be owned by anybody. Mm-hmm. And I invested in myself. I'm 100% owned by me. But the time has come now that I was approached by Reliance, or I was approached by other people to own my businesses. I flew to India, had meetings with them. I will never give majority of my business, and most people want majority of your business because you can scale my business. My business is like a little jewel. Now, I can make this business really, really big. So my new idea is, which I don't have the money to do it, but I'm going to figure it out,
Could it be scaled by AI?
is that I want to have my own freestanding retail stores where I can give the woman the most amazing experience. It's all about taking care and making things for the person, right? So during COVID, when Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman, everything was closed, and women were still having the bar mitzvahs or weddings, they needed clothes. So they started calling my office. We said, come to the office. So just to give you an idea, a dress that I produce for $1,000 is retailed at Bergdorf Goodman for $10,000. Okay, by the time my scaling and the Bergdorf Goodman scaling, everything. But when you do couture, that same dress which I make for $1,000 probably will now cost $1,300 to make, but you'll be paying $20,000 for it. So the margins are so tremendous, it's like being in the cocaine business. So you could, if I had my own retail store, I mean, you could be doing $15, $20 million every year. Imagine the profits. Your only cost is $1 million. And you do 20 of these. You look at the ideas of Zimmerman and all the other stores. This could be $1 billion business. So I'm trying to figure how do I bring this in so that I can open one first in Riyadh, one in Dubai, a few in America, and it could be a tremendous, that's my next step.
Okay, so retail is next. Anjula, how do you think about scaling yourself? Because, you do manage Priyanka, but I don't know how many more stars you've managed beyond that. And you've been so singularly focused. How do you think about adding investments? How do you think about scaling yourself? Because there's only one Anjula.
There really is only one Anjula. It's very problematic. No, I mean, look, I think for me, scale is about the businesses that I invest in, right? So, like, one of the big challenges with all the businesses that I invest in, whether it's on the CPG side, which is consumer packaged goods, which are generally like foods and things, or whether it's a consumer tech business, it's really about what can you do that you can consistently replicate and build a model around, right? And that you can build that and scale that. And it's funny because in media and in entertainment and the work I do in management, it is a very individual-led business, and it's very hard to scale that. But what I think about with talent is how do you scale the talent? So for Priyanka, like how can I put her in multiple businesses that, like, she has a hair care business, she has multiple businesses that whether she's there or not, they will continue to scale and they will continue to grow, and she will continually get residual income from those. And it's not dependent on her being on a film set or anything like that. And when I think about AI, I think about how do we, use AI in all of these different fields to scale the businesses that she's in, so it's not dependent on her. So as I think about talent, that's the way I think about it. In terms of myself, it's like, look, you can work on 10 different people, but chances are it's only one of those people that you work on that's really bringing in the big bucks, so to speak. So, I've nailed in on that. But in terms of tech and my investments, yeah, it's really just finding about replicable models that you can just keep scaling. And every time I speak to one of my companies, I'm like, okay, how do we scale that? If we see success in something, how do we scale that? Can we do that 100 times? Can we do that 10,000 times? Can we do that 1 billion times? So I'm just looking for those things within a business that I can see that could scale.
I also heard great things about that hair care brand because I think she launched it in India, and I heard
Correct.
things about
Yeah,
it.
it's like on Nika, it's like the number 4 best-selling hair care brand right now.
Incredible. Tan, it's been such a joy seeing you. You started with, your own business, Queer Eye, but then Next in Fashion, which I got to interview you for. How do you think about scaling yourself too? Because you've taken on all these different roles. I think you also did a post Q&A for the Emmys at one point. You're doing all these cooking reels. Maybe you're going to have a cooking show. But I'd love to hear about your next forays too.
Well, as Anjula said, it's hard to scale talent the right way. And there's only one of me. There really aren't that many queer South Asians in entertainment. But I have a lot that I want to do with this platform. And so I launched a production company last year called French Tuck Media. If any of you know or have ever seen Queer Eye, I'm known for something called the French Tuck that I did many years ago. And so my production company is called French Tuck, and we predominantly make South Asian TV for a Western audience. So we've been doing it for a year. We have 3 shows that one of them is sold, 2 of them are hopefully selling this week.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And they're all with a South Asian focus. Not necessarily queer South Asian, but South Asian. Because I know just how formidable we are as a people. I know how entertaining we are as a people. And I don't want to be on TV for very long. I'm hoping within the next few years I can take a back seat and just manage this company. And that's how I'm planning on scaling myself, but more so the South Asian agenda, quite frankly. And I got into this business because I have an agenda. I retired when I was 32. I didn't need this. I do it because I've got a lot to say.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I also want to take a moment for, I think, South Asian fashion having a moment, whether it is icons from Priyanka Chopra to Alia Bhatt walking that stage.
Yeah.
Like, it's everywhere. Naeem Khan showing, and you're seeing those dresses everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's also in design where you're seeing more gender fluidity. You're seeing those 2-piece, almost lehenga-like outfits. We even did a story about everyone wearing a hood at one point, looking like a dupatta.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about what are you all observing about some of these trends? How do you think South Asian fashion is so unique? What are people finally catching on to it? Naeem, we can start with you first.
So, India's come to such incredible limelight in the last, I would say, decade, right? Indian designers, we have so much talent. When I first came to America, there was no schools in India of fashion. I mean, it was just our, shalwar kameez, or you were wearing a sari. There was nothing. And there were far in between little designers who were doing this. Now what you see in India, some of the couture pieces being made in India are so incredible that you can't make it anywhere. Not in Paris. We're competing like insane because we have the most amazing artists in India. We are born. Everybody's an artist in India. Everybody's making a craft in India. So these guys, designers are honing into these amazing artists and collaborating and creating these incredible clothes. Now, it's still not commercial, right? Because it's so, sometimes Indian designers they get lost in the India world, right? Because I've taken it on another level where it's more Western. So in my world, I mean, I take influences from India, I clean it up because of my design where I come from with Halston and that world, and I make it modern, right? But there's so much India in there. Predominantly, India was always known for embroideries, right? Because everybody's worn embroideries. I mean, you look at Sabyasachi or you look at the other, I mean, like, it's laden.
That's right.
Exactly. So craft is second nature in India. So it's still a little experimental where it's not caught up in the West in such a big way. But I think it's coming. But it's coming in a very amazing way. You look at Sabyasachi opened his store here. There are other designers who are trying to come here. They've got collaboration. I mean, they've been owned by the Reliance Group. There's going to be big money put into this. And we're showing in Paris. I think India is going to be a power player for fashion in the next decade, big time.
So, this is so interesting to me because I'm not in fashion in the way you guys are. But, I mean, I don't know how long ago. It's 20 years ago. I dressed the Pussycat Dolls Fashion Rocks in saris, and everyone thought that was crazy. But I still believe that Indian silhouette of that sari, there is nothing more sexy than that. There just isn't. Like, you see Zendaya in a sari, and she looks a freaking knockout. And what's so interesting this year that's happened, so every year I throw this Diwali party in New York City, and this year what's so interesting, I never cared for it to be like a big fashion moment, but this year what's so insane is like literally Nina Garcia from Elle Magazine's a host. We have InStyle doing portrait galleries. We've got like Allure doing beauty features. And all of this was inbound. Like New York Times always covers it and Vogue always covers it, but now they want to do big fashion features. And I mean, USA Today is doing a huge fashion feature, and everyone keeps coming at me saying like, oh, Indian fashion's having a moment and your party's where it's at and we want to be there. And I mean, I've always been at the forefront of celebrity and fashion and wanting to create those, those links. But it's just so incredible that at this year for Diwali, everybody wants to be there from all the like mainstream American fashion magazines. And, look, I think we're seeing a lot with, Kim Kardashian just coming back from the Ambani wedding, wearing a lehenga. Really putting it out there. But I really think we're in this moment. And I do think the silhouettes, and to Naeem's point, the embroideries and, look, I just think people are really seeing it for the beauty that it is.
Last night I had dinner with John Dempsey. He was the president of Estee Lauder. And we were discussing why India has not taken off in the past and what's happening now. Because Estee Lauder was trying to get into India for the longest time. The problem was, I mean, it's a reverse thing, right? Indian coming here, but the Western, because India is such a great, big economy that you need you need American designers or French designers to be there. So now with Nykaa, with retail, amazing malls being built, so it's going to be a lot of back and forth between India and the West. So we're going to be sharing. The schools are running in India like crazy. So the economy, the fashion, I want to be in India. And I feel like, and I've never thought that I wanted to go to India and build my business there. Now I'm dreaming I need to go back and I need to build my business there because I'm getting calls from people saying, why aren't you here? I'm just signed a deal. I think I probably will sign a deal in the next month on my fragrances. So, and I know that when I launch my fragrances, I want India to be a big part of it for me. And it's going to be a whole area of fragrances based from Middle East, India, and the West. And I think it's going to be, I'm still working on that, but it's a big play, India.
I want to let Tan speak, but just one thing I wanted to add to that. There's also just this thing about economics and money talks. And there's just so much money in India right now. And, when you think about it, you think about, designers like Gucci, Hermes, and people like that. And then you think about the Indian designers, where people are walking into their stores and spending, $25,000 on one outfit. Like the money that there is in India is something that all these luxe brands are suddenly going, wait, people are going into a store like Falcone and Shane Peacock and spending $25,000 on one outfit. How are we not being in that? So I think, India's a very interesting story because there's just so much money there. And but yeah, I think money talks. I want to hand it over to you.
I'm really impressed by what is coming out of India. These smaller independent labels, I think, are so impressive. Look, they don't have the financial backing, and that's okay. They'll get there eventually. But I think that social media has played such a massive part in allowing them to be seen by the West. I'm wearing a brand called Jody today that launched, I think, just last year. And there's a lot of brands that I wear that I try and wear as much Indian or South Asian as I physically can. Even when I'm on the red carpet, I will try and wear a Shivani. I like to support South Asian designers as much as possible because I think that their work is incredible. They don't have access the way we have access to the fashion industry, but what they're doing is so unique. And yes, so much of it is embroidery. Why not embrace that? That is what they do incredibly well. I love their work, and so I think that social media has made it somewhat easier, but has leveled the playing field for a lot of designers that we would never have had access to 10 to 15 years ago. And I think that was the major kicker here. And I think the bigger social media gets in India, especially when it comes to the likes of Instagram, I wish that they had TikTok. I think that would really help these young designers really get off the ground.
I think embroidery is our signature. Look, even the shirt you're wearing, without that embroidery, it's just a plain
shirt.
And I think nobody can do embroidery like we can do in
No.
India. China cannot do it.
No.
Nobody can do it. And I think we have such a stronghold.
Yeah.
And that's our forte.
Yeah.
And we need to keep it that way.
But we do see it being... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say the other thing that we should all not miss is we have our own economy, guys. Like, even if we don't have the white gaze, we can make money within our economies. South Asians are so successful, doing so much. They have so much disposable income now. I mean, just a couple of things, like some data points. Like, Diljit Dosanjh came to America, sold out Staples Center. Like, hello. Like, most American mainstream acts cannot sell out Staples Center. I was talking to my friend Vivek Khanna, who runs Bungalow. I think you had him here today. Like, that restaurant is not pandering to the white gaze and is crushing it and has a 2,000 wait list every single night. So I also think a lot of these Indian designers, they have their own whole economy that they can access. Like, you know, I think but people have looked at India as this third world country and they don't have money. They have way more money than we have. And it's a totally different world. And the economy here, South Asians in America make a lot of money and are crushing it and like, you know, are going out, are living for experiences, are spending money on experiences, and really, like I said, have built our own economy. So we don't need to pander to the white gaze anymore. Go ahead, Naeem. Sorry.
No, that's so true. I mean, like, look at Dubai as an example. I mean, like, you go there, mostly Indians who are so rich. Incredible. Everybody's got a Rolls Royce and Bentley. I mean, they're like driving around filthy rich. Even in India, I mean, I find when I travel to that side of the world, Asia, it's developing so fast, while I find America is like a dinosaur, that we are stagnant and we are kind of, you know, all what's happening with politics and all, it's like really stagnant. And it's, you know, Asia is flying. And that's where the economy and the business of fashion is going to be really good there.
Agreed. I do think that that we're seeing the West really appreciate what we're doing in the East. I mean, they're bastardizing it, but we see major retailers. I don't know if any of you have seen the menswear in Zara this season. I mean, it's all covered in embroidery. The women's wear is covered in embroidery. Every major fast fashion retailer is doing what they are seeing in India. They're taking the designs of these kids who have created incredible small brands, and then they're taking from them and mass producing it. So clearly the Indian brands are onto something. I'm just hoping at some point the Western brands will fuck off and leave them alone.
100%.
And let the people who are actually doing the work do the work.
100%. Last question for you all before we open up to the audience, because I know you have so many questions for these people. What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for doing things that nobody else has done. Like, you know, for me, breaking Priyanka in America was, you know, a first. No one had ever broken a South Asian talent from India in America. Like, a lot of the companies that I've built, like, no one's ever, like, disrupted, you know, the the food industry or disrupt it, or they have disrupted the food industry, I shouldn't say that, but in the way that I did, or the fitness industry. I just want to do really big things that nobody's done. But my biggest goal is that South Asians get to do whatever they want to do anywhere in the world and don't feel any barriers to doing that, and can dream big because they've seen other people do it, and they just go out and crush their dreams because they see other South Asians do it.
I come from humble beginnings. My grandfather was an embroidery worker, and that drove me to that I want to remain in that business. So I want to be known for what I took my family tradition and the tradition of India, and I made it modern for the world, for the new woman.
My agenda when I started at Netflix was to portray South Asians in a way that we don't typically see them portrayed. This was 7 years ago. Many of you look very young. You may not remember what TV was like 7 years ago, but we weren't.
They don't know what TV is.
I know. Sorry. You know, your iPhone. There used to be a really big version of that we would put on a wall. Anyway, so. Back in the day, we didn't really see us reflected well or portrayed well. And so, if nothing else, I'm hoping that first and foremost, people remember me as my son's dad. That's my first job. But secondly, I hope that they remember that I was ballsy enough to be myself on a global platform. And at no point have I apologized for how I behave publicly being a queer South Asian Muslim man.
Hats off to you, Tan. You're amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
We love you, Tan.
Thank you very much.
Love
That's
you.
very nice. Thanks.
Questions? Yes, go ahead. Is there a mic? It's coming this way.
Hi, all.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. I'm Ayushi. I actually work in fashion retail. It's my first job right now. And just being in the fashion space, being South Asian, just that representation has become very important to me, especially on social media. So I kind of wanted to ask you, there was this whole viral situation with the Scandinavian summer and the, Scandinavian scarf. I don't know if maybe
It was
Am
like-
I just so old? I have no idea what you're talking about.
There was a situation. There
Yeah.
was like a TikTok that went viral where this one brand was like, "Oh, look at this dupatta." They called it, "Oh, it's so classy. It's so European. It's Scandinavian." But
Oh,
actually it's a
no.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, you guys should look it up. It was
I'll send you
hilarious.
the Juggernaut
Sure,
article on
yeah.
it.
Wow.
But that exact situation, it sparked this huge controversy. Like, for the South Asian community, everyone was slamming it. Like, what is this? This brand clearly didn't do their research, et cetera. And so there are all these other brands too across the world that'll take like jhumkas, for example, and call it something else, or even like there's this trend of like the two-piece prom dresses that basically lehengas.
Yeah.
So there's this whole like thing about like appropriation, but also like appreciation. So how do you kind of define that line where like, us as South Asians, we're so proud of it. We want that, fashion aspect from India to come here to the West as well, but also kind of protecting and getting that credit as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've always had a strong opinion on this. I'm fine with somebody referencing South Asian attire or any part of our culture as long as they acknowledge that they're referencing South Asian culture. I love that people will embrace a version of a lehenga. I love that people will embrace Asian jewelry or mehndi or any of those things, as long as they're not referring to it as anything other than what it is. So I see that as celebration as opposed to appropriation. And so as long as we understand the difference, I'm totally fine with that.
I guess like another second part of it before anyone else is like kind of also the education part of it too, right? Someone might be wearing a two-piece for their prom dress but not know that it's a lehenga. So like how do you kind of it's a very big question. I know there's a lot of work on it, but I wanted to get all of your thoughts on.
Well,
how to
that's what
approach
comments on TikTok are for. People will educate them. Go on, please. I will.
It's people in fashion, or not in fashion, people are very ignorant. Like, I see it all. You travel the world, people have no idea where anything came from. Like, you say cotton, people think cotton comes from America, the middle of America. Cotton comes from India, Egypt, that's where it really grew. Like, even hemp as an example. I wanted to be, I love hemp. And there was a time I was going to do a whole project in Florida, growing my own hemp, making fiber and making product from hemp. The problem became, of course, political because of hemp is kind of related to marijuana. And then it took so long to do the whole thing.
Right.
But hemp in India was, everything was hemp. People don't even realize so much of stuff comes from somewhere else, but people take it. But what I'm so happy, this last Ambani wedding, it really put India, as much as I am not a huge fan of such a vulgar display of wealth, but it really did show India in a good, there is stuff there that people, that we are rich, and we are rich in culture. It's going to happen with time. I don't think either Tan or any of us can stand up and say, oh, you can scream as much as you want, you can do whatever you want. It's not going to happen. It's people are going to do Scandinavian scarf, whatever it is, but in the end, it'll be what it'll be. I don't know.
People we know, right there.
Give that young lady the mic.
Yeah. Why don't you, if you can say it out loud, I can repeat your question.
Thank you for being here. I am a founder of a vegan-inspired ice cream company, and one of
What's it called?
Malai.
Malai.
And one of the things that I've been doing it for 9 years, and we're growing, and it's exciting. But one of the things that I constantly think about is how I define success and how that changes every year, basically.
Yeah.
When you're this successful and all of you are this successful, how did you define success, and how did that change throughout the years, and how do you define it now?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a couple more follow-up
Wait,
questions?
can I just repeat the question quickly for everybody else? So she asked, how do you define success, and how has that definition changed over the years, and how do you define it now? Go ahead.
But she's an ice cream company. Did you take outside capital, or is it self-funded?
It was self-funded up until last year, and I took friends and family.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. As an investor, success to me, if you've taken outside capital, is do you give those investors a return on their investment? And what is that? So they don't want to get their principal back. They want to make money on it. Maybe they just invest in you because they love you and they love your mission and all of that. And that'd be great if that's the case. But I think there are two very distinct things about success when you take outside capital. For me, as an investor and an entrepreneur, if I take someone's money, I want to give them a certain X return on that investment. And that for me is success. But I also want to tell you another story, which is when I founded Desi Hits, I didn't have an exit and I didn't return the money to investors. But what I did was something very pivotal in culture. And those people were professional investors and they knew there was a risk. And friends and family is very different, by the way, because it's, it's in your pocket. But when you're an institutional investor, that's a different situation. But what I will say is two companies. One was Desi Hits, and I think when you think of kind of what's happening in the world with South Asian culture and the sort of like integrating of two cultures, I think we really started that. And then you've got a company like Napster that didn't have a return and didn't make money, but then really paved the way for something like Spotify. So to me, that Napster was a success because it really paved the way and created progress in an industry. So I think some companies aren't considered successful, but really drive an industry. And I think those companies are successful when they do that. But I do think if you take money from people, you've got to give it back to them with interest.
I also think that you maybe you'll disagree, and I would love to hear if you do.
I'll let you know.
I'm sure you will. No, I see success as ever changing. I think that your idea of success should probably change. Look, Anjula has achieved massive success, but her idea of success might be very different from mine. I had 4 businesses. The first few years of my first business, I saw success as I want to be able to fly first class whenever I want. That was my idea of success because I grew up poor. By the time I got to my 4th business and was about to exit, my idea of success was very different. However, I've still got an inkling that my vision of success, even at the end of that and retiring at 32, is probably not Anjula's idea of success. So it really is dependent on what you set out to do initially, and every year reevaluating what your version of success is. And for me, it was just personal happiness. It wasn't financial goals. It wasn't, yes, paying back. I never had an investor investor, but if I did, I definitely would have seen that as success to pay them off. But really, it's what is it that's making me happy about my business? And if I'm still happy in my business or I'm happy with the exit strategy, that is my version of success. So I don't think you should ever compare your idea of success to anybody else's. Ours vary greatly on this panel, and that's okay.
Thank you.
I do think if you're moving culture, I think that's a huge success.
Yeah.
I think if you're shifting culture
Yeah.
and you pave the way for somebody else, whether you make money or don't make money, I think that is really important to progress in the world.
Agreed?
I've never had an investor, so I don't know, but
Yeah.
thank God. But for me, success is of course the business aspect. I want enough finances to run and pay my bills. But to me, because of how closely I am to everything that I draw, and when I see it on a person, it makes me tremendously happy. For either be the First Lady or Kate Middleton sitting in front of the Taj Mahal or whatever. I mean, to me, watching a woman walk in and she looks like $1 million makes my heart sing. And that to me is success. And that's it.
Thank you. One last question. We good to go?
Oh, let them have answer too quick.
Two more.
We'll be quick.
Two more. Isha, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I wanted to ask a little bit about, the South Asian culture of, wearing your family's clothes, wearing hand-me-downs. It's a big part of at least what I was used to growing up. And now we're in this new wave of fashion about sustainability and thrifting. And what are some tips that you have for people to repurpose their mom's clothes, their grandmother's clothes, and also be sustainable with their fashion making decisions?
Oh, totally.
And that to you guys.
Oh. I think it's so important to reprocess clothes. It's really, really important. I do that with my children. All my amazing jackets my boys will take. They literally don't buy clothes. They wear only my clothes. And I'm
going to take your clothes also. You've got a third son now.
You did succeed. He did take off his
Yeah.
jacket.
I
so-
did.
Yeah.
And
'Cause I wanted to
because
steal it.
me being in the industry and I know everybody. I mean, I can walk into either Gaultier or whatever it is. I can get things for literally for nothing. So I have collected a mass. I mean, I'm talking about like 400 suits. So think like it's in warehouses that I give away to my friends. But I think it's so important that we reprocess. And as a manufacturer, also as a designer, I also am becoming so conscious of what am I buying? Is it like, for example, we've been buying when you take old polyester or rayon fabrics that are recrushed and new fiber is made. And I'm seeing chiffon that looks like silk coming from old shredded fabrics. And we are using that in our $10,000 dresses. It's so important to do that. And I'm meeting with somebody who's making fabrics from banana. India is making amazing, amazing stuff in sustainability. So it's important to do what.
And if for no other reason, I think it is such a beautiful thing to do for your elders to show that you respect and appreciate our culture and who they were and how they represented their culture through their clothing. And so when I get to wear something of I wore a necklace that the internet in India really made fun of, but it was my mum's wedding set. And they were talking about how 80s it was or 70s, and I just thought, I don't care. I made my mum proud. Like I wore something that had held such incredible value. And so I would say if you get a chance to repurpose something of your mom's, your family, I think it's such a sign of respect and honor.
Like for my father just passed away 2 months ago, and I was in India, and I asked my mother all his pajamas to be in my. That whole month that I was there, only wore his pajamas. I could just feel. I mean, to me, what Tan is saying is so important. To what we do is so important, I think, and we grew up with that culture. My nani and my dad, they all took. Everybody wore each other's things.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture, and I think it's so important.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing such beautiful wisdom and your wealth of experience and knowledge. And sorry to hear about your father passing away.
Sorry, thank you.
I wanted to ask you about how you feel you are on the scale of optimism and pessimism. This is a topic that I'm thinking about. I'm a psychiatrist. I wrote a book about the topic. And I'm curious because when I think of very successful entrepreneurs and the risk that you take, my tendency is to want to imagine that you naturally fall on this tendency to see the glass half full, even when it's not, that you fight through any pessimism. So I'm just curious, where do you fall? How do you identify in the optimism, pessimism spectrum? The book is called Practical Optimism. So that's how I think of myself, not a natural born, but I'm curious how you would identify.
You know, it's so funny. I worry about everything. I'm going to be honest. Like, I really do worry about everything. Like I say, I do all of these really risky things and I'm panicked like the night before and the weeks before. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to make a complete ass of myself? But what I will say is I have this deep optimism which comes from actually ignorance. Like, for example, I've raised a ton of venture capital for a lot of women, and not just women, but people. And, you know, when I first entered the industry, like, I didn't even know that only 3% of women get venture funding in America. I didn't know all of these facts. And I went out and I raised money, and it was relatively easy. You know, I did my research, I did my homework, I had my decks, I did everything, but it was still relatively easy. And I was so ignorant, I didn't know it was so hard. And then later, when all these women started coming to me saying, hey, I'm really struggling to raise money, I know only 3% of venture capital goes to women, I'd be like, don't even listen to that stat. Don't walk into a VC's office with that stat in your mind. Like, that's just gonna hurt you. So one of the things about me is that I'm forever an optimist in that way, in that I do come from that place of abundance. I know that sounds very woo-woo, but I really do. I never think about the fact that it's hard to raise money, or it's hard to get this, or it's hard to break a star, or it's hard to build a company. I don't come at it from that point ever. And when I'm speaking to people, because most of building people or doing things is getting other people to come along on your journey, right? You have to sell your idea or your vision to somebody, and you have to get them to come on your journey. I already believe that they're coming on my journey. If I want you on my journey, I believe you will be on my journey. Like, I don't know, I just have that optimism. But I don't want people to walk away from this thinking that I never worry about shit, because I worry about stuff all the time.
I'm as delusional as Anjula. I also go into every situation thinking, well, why shouldn't I do this? And why can't I do this? I don't think there's been a time in a long time where I've thought, oh, this isn't a space for me, even though I know most of the time there's never been a me in that space. And I think if I fail, I fail, but I that's not going to be that's not going to be the thing I'm focusing on when I go into something. If I want to do something, I'm going to try it. If I think that I have a right to be in a space, I will be there. But I also do then start to panic the night before. And so I think that they coexist. I think that
Totally.
the worry and the anxiety absolutely is ever present. However, it doesn't deter me from being always positive and assuming that the glass is always half full. And that's worked in my favor up until now. I mean, I'm 40. I've been doing that for 20 years, and delusion lasts forever. Who knew?
And the thing is that whole thing about don't believe the hype. I say this all the time. Don't believe the hype. People are going to keep telling you that everything's impossible. And if you believe it's impossible, of course it will be impossible. But I do also think this whole thing about panicking and worrying, which I do all the time, like all the time, I think is just me, like, you know, breaking out of my comfort zone. Like, now I've gotten used to that feeling of that anxiety. And I'm like, I tell myself, I'm just breaking out of my comfort zone, and it doesn't feel good, right? But I know that the reward on the other side could be amazing, versus sort of seeing it. I heard this thing the other day, and they were saying, you know, you fear, like, I won't do this because I don't want to make an ass of myself. I won't do this because I feel like this is going to go wrong. It's just a collection of negative thoughts that are not true, right? So, like, you're seeing an outcome that you don't even know is true. So I try and sort of talk myself out of those things when I'm feeling it, and I'll just be like, oh, these are a collection of thoughts that are not true, and I can't prove unless I can prove to myself they're true, I don't believe them.
20 years ago, when I've had my first collection, everybody said to me, don't show a collection. Why do you need to waste your money? Why do you want to do this? I jumped in and I had my first collection. But when I first showed my collection, for the first 4 or 5 years, I used to be so sick to the point where after the collection, I had to be in bed for 2 days, sheer fever. Even now, like, a week before the collection, I hate everything. And I feel like I wish I had done this. I wish I had not done this. I wish it was, now I can't change it because it takes hundreds of hours to do things. So, I think it's just human nature. For me, within design, it's very different from finance because there's more logic to that. In mine, it's just my mind. I go through so much up and down. It's good, it's not good, it's good, not. Then that's why I have to have an amazing amount of people around me to tell me, okay, shut up, it's good, we can sell it. My director of sales or my assistants, they're always putting confidence back into me. But I go through this roller coaster till finally it's done. And now I don't cry or I don't feel sick after a fashion show because I've done hundreds of them. But it comes with time, it comes with, it changes. It's always evolving. So
I do think also there's this thing with entrepreneurs that somehow, or not just entrepreneurs, but we're all entrepreneurs, is like you get used to that toxicity, like the up and down, and then when it doesn't happen, you crave it somehow. Like, and then you're bored. Like if I'm not taking risks, I feel bored, and then when I'm not bored, I'm anxious. You know what I mean? And I think that, you're the psychologist here. Maybe that's a really toxic trait.
Yeah, she really wants to talk to you after this.
She needs to.